It's TNT on a Tuesday. Trent and Todd with you as we break down the Hawkeyes letting one slip away against Indiana. We got some insight into the Mark Gronowski injury. We read into what the coordinators had to say yesterday. All today, Locked On Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon. That's Todd Brommelkamp, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Well, Todd and myself, we have, a combined 45 years of experience of covering this team in one fashion or another throughout the years as we look at the Hawkeyes, and we've watched so many Iowa football games, Todd, as we go back to Saturday, the performance against Indiana, letting one slip away. It had the feeling throughout so many moments of this game, it was going to be another fair and special. This is going to be a way, Kinnick Stadium, maybe it was going to be the deciding factor. Somehow, some way, they were going to beat an opponent better than them until they didn't. A missed field goal. Before that, a missed screenplay. And then, of course, giving up the big play on third down. A lot of what ifs in this one, and you can certainly see the frustration and feel the frustration from Hawkeye Nation.
Yeah, you look back at Kirk Ferentz's better years, the so-called special years. They always steal one that they're not supposed to win, and that was a game that I think that they very well had an opportunity to win. And I think I put on social media somewhere after halftime, 27 years, I still don't know how he does it. They're going to pull this one off. Indiana looked like the better team all day long, and it didn't happen at the end. And so you get that, are you upset at the loss? It wasn't a blowout. I mean, the Indiana didn't do to Iowa what they did to Illinois, but you go into the bye week, obviously, with a pretty bad taste in your mouth because of some of the things that you did see in that game.
You can see the growth out of this squad, and we're going to get into it. We'll talk about Mark Gronowski's injury, maybe a concern about Drew Stevens, of course, the wizardry, once again, of Phil Parker. Plus, we got some women's basketball news. I want to talk a little bit about the commitment today from McKenna Lichko, as I said it completely wrong. Woliczko. There, I got it. Woliczko.
You got to brush up on your Polish, right?
I had to slow down, and then I got it. Well, you're in Czech country. I mean, you have that one knocked off easily, right, Todd?
The Czech or Polish. I've spent enough time in Chicago and the Czech Village here in Cedar Rapids. Yeah, right. Those names don't throw me for a curve.
Woliczko. It just took me a moment when we got back to it. So we'll get into that a little bit later on. Back to Iowa football, though, and on the heels of this one, you are what your record says you are, and This is a 2-loss team. You can make excuses, you can give reasons, whatever kind of terminology you want to use, but this team has lost 2 games, and though they're 2 undefeated, top 15 teams in Iowa State and Indiana, there's also the other side of it. It's Iowa State and Indiana. And this isn't something that I haven't gone down this road yet. In fact, I didn't even really just popped into my mind, but I think I understand some of the frustration. And there's, the crazy wing of the Hawkeye fan base, right? And we see it all the time. We've heard from them. We've read them all that are out there, that everything's always negative. There's always going to be this negativity, but having Iowa State becoming the program that they are now, and not just a blip on the radar, not every once in a while, but becoming one of the powers of the league, perhaps in the Big 12. And now you see Indiana, a Morbin program, the losingest program at the power conference structure, and you're seeing these programs ascend to this. And now you wonder where Iowa sits in the hierarchy of the Big 10, of college football, in this new age of college football. In a way, I kind of understand some of the angst out there and some of the frustration, just because, there were 2 losses to two good teams, but why is Iowa State and Indiana good, and Iowa maybe isn't even at that level anymore?
I wish I had an answer to that right now, but I think, as you mentioned, with the changes to college football, if you could have picked a worse time to start feeling a little angsty about this team, I don't think you could. Because once you fall behind in this era, I think it's going to be really hard to get back up there into the upper echelon. And the good news for the Hawkeyes is, if you look at the Big 10, there's 18 teams in that league. There's a lot of other teams that are right there in the middle with them. Now, you can view that as a positive or a negative, but I think it's very clear looking at this team this year early on that they're not going to be among the elite teams. The college football playoff dreams are probably up in smoke at this point. But if you're completely optimistic, like you said, you look the two losses to top 15, top 20 teams. So how much do you read into that? I don't know.
There's still opportunities in front of them. And you have the rivalry games. You have both Penn State and Oregon coming into your building. Obviously, pulling an upset against either of those two teams would be monumental. It would be one of, another one of those handful of great wins in Kinnick, but it's still a long ways before they get to that. And this team's got to get a lot better in order to get there. One guy that we did see getting a lot better was Mark Gronowski.
Yep.
And the development that had been building, what was happening in game one. I mean, we asked all those questions and just how ugly it looked against Albany. Saw some growth against Iowa State, but not good enough. And of course, getting sacked in those two plays late in the game was, I think, the lasting image for a lot of people. UMass was UMass. Then we saw it against Rutgers, and we saw it throwing the football against Indiana. And as everything was building, and boy, maybe Iowa finally has a quarterback, he goes down with injury. And after being so long where Iowa didn't have injured quarterbacks, now over the last 3 years, it's been endless injuries at the quarterback position. I thought it was interesting yesterday when we heard from the coordinators and heard from Tim Lester, and he didn't want to talk about it. You could tell right away that he didn't want to go down that road. He was going to let the boss handle that one. That led to a little bit more concern for me. Okay, it's not season ending. He was asked that question, said that, but the likelihood that he's going to be back, even for the matchup against Wisconsin, I think becomes a little bit more questionable at this point. It's injuries. It's the Iowa football program. I don't know if we'll get anything definitive until maybe we get that availability report 90 minutes before kickoff. But that aside, Mark Gronowski, and just the frustration grows at the quarterback position when it finally felt like, at minimum, Iowa was going to be okay there, and now an injury hits.
Yeah, especially, this isn't a situation where you can take the damaged goods back to the store and get a refund here. And this was a one and done, and they knew that. So I was somewhat pleased with what I saw from Hank Brown. I think there's a little bit of promise there. And then you got the Wake Forest Heklinski behind him. Jeremy Heklinski, I'm trying not to call him Jeremy Hellickson. That'll happen if he winds up on the field. But yeah, I think you saw the gradual comfort with Gronowski, and he was starting to figure things out. And the brace on the knee and looking like he was warming up on the sidelines and wanted to come back in. And obviously, I think they decided they were going to take the best route there and go into the bye week and get more information on that. And who knows? Cloudy is a term that I think the Hawkeyes have used in the past, and it usually doesn't turn out too well. Mm-hmm. So I would expect Hank Brown to probably be playing in that Wisconsin game next week. But if there's a game where maybe Iowa can get by with a backup quarterback in the near future, it's probably that Wisconsin game.
I know a lot of people look at the stat line from Saturday. They see Hank Brown missing on that fourth down play. Of course, missing on the screen pass, and they're ready to throw him out already. And now we're already hearing about Heklinski, and let's just go in that direction. I want to remind people, one of the best quarterbacks we've seen at Iowa, certainly in the Kirk Ferentz era, was C.J. Beathard. And his first long-term performance that we saw out of him, he comes in against Wisconsin, and he was awful. 4 of 15, 70 yards, threw an interception of that game, and we know what he built into. And you mentioned Hank Brown. I liked what I saw. I know the screen pass will live maybe in infamy for a long time as that one went down, and certainly if he doesn't turn into a good quarterback. But a lot of people forget that opening performance from C.J. Beathard. Young quarterbacks, they're going to struggle, and certainly when they're thrown into the deep end of the pool like he was against that Indiana defense that is good, I think you see enough in the arm talent for Hank Brown to be excited what he can do if he has to play for the rest of this season and going forward. That dude can throw the football.
I would put this question to Iowa fans that want to throw Hank Brown overboard already. I think he's one of the best looking backup quarterbacks Iowa has had in recent memory. Yes. When's the last time that you saw a backup quarterback at least show the promise that Hank Brown has shown so far? So I would give him a little bit more length of rope or length of leash than some Hawkeye fans are at this point before wanting to see the number 3 guy at this point. I think things will be in good hands if they have to go the Hank Brown route.
We'll talk a little bit more about some Iowa football, some concerns that continue. Drew Stevens, what's going on with Iowa's special teams? And not just Stevens, another punt block in the game, second of the season on that front. We'll get into that. And of course, the wizardry of Phil Parker as it strikes once again. We'll talk about that as we continue. Trent, Condon, and Todd Brommelkamp with you on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. Trent, Todd, Brommelkamp back with you on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. All right, Todd, let's jump into a concern area, and it's the Iowa special teams. And Caden Weechin had the poor performance against Iowa State, bounced back and was incredibly good. We know what a dangerous returner he can be, but he had the missed kick by Drew Stevens, and the laces were out or in, or depending on what way you look at it. They weren't to the back. They weren't towards the goalpost, though, and you could see that when Nissen was spinning it over. A punt block for the second time. Let's start with Stevens. We know it's not a talent problem, right? But you go back to 2 years ago and just how bad it got for him, as it was Marshall Meter that kicked the game winner against Nebraska and barely got that one over the crossbar to beat the Huskers once again. And here we go again and yank that field goal to the left. Had a missed extra point earlier this season. Has had some missed field goals. Where are you when it comes to Drew Stevens? Because my mind just goes back again to what we saw a couple of years ago. And my concern level raises a lot higher, I think, than it would normally for a guy that has enough of a resume that you shouldn't be too concerned with.
Yeah, you know as well as I do, you can't trust college kickers. And just as soon as you feel comfortable that you've got one that bucks those trends, you're reminded, no, you've got a college kicker. My mind went to Marshall Meter right away. I will say this, having spoken with Drew Stevens a number of times over the last couple of years, I'm having a hard time recalling a time when the Hawkeyes had a more confident kicker than Drew Stevens. So I think he's going to be able to work on some things and straighten some things out. Nobody takes a miss harder than he does. I can tell you that much. And it's concerning at this point because we talked about this Iowa team needing to, much like Iowa State, have success in the margins. And when you give things away on special teams, that's going to come back and get you. But he is just a part of the issue on special teams. Like you said, there's been punt blocks. There have been some returns that have been blown up, both good and bad for Weechin. So that's an area of concern that the Hawkeyes have to try to figure out here in the bye week.
No doubt. The punt block, Reese Dakin has kind of struggled. And I'd heard that Reese was called into the corner office and went to talk to Kirk before the game last week against Indiana and kind of seeing, is there something going on? And I think he's okay. It's nothing that is overly concerning there. Still, it's a guy from a long ways away. He's had some changes. I know a couple of his good friends that were walk-ons with the program are no longer there. And you just kind of wonder what the headspace, but that's the second time he's been blocked this year. A lot of times that's not just the punter's issue. Those are other guys. And we saw that certainly in the one a couple of weeks ago that Montgomery just whiffed on a block, but still you have that. He hasn't had the boomers, I think, that we anticipated there. And these are those little things, those little things that add up when Iowa pulls the upset, and they didn't add up on Saturday.
Yeah, and you look back, and obviously he's had big shoes to fill over the last year plus in Tory Taylor, and he wasn't going to be Tory Taylor. And like you said, usually when a punt gets blocked, it's not always on the punter. And so I think there's probably some issues that LeVar Woods is working on, but I think maybe a week off probably comes at a good time for Reese. Maybe clear that headspace a little bit, go over some film and see what it is that maybe you could do better. I think that they'll be all right there. We don't normally see LeVar Woods' special teams units look this questionable as they have so far this season. And again, you just hope that this follows the track that a lot of other Kirk Ferentz teams have had, where maybe they have some issues and they go in that first bye week and they are able to fix one or two of them. And if you're the Hawkeyes, I think you're hoping that those special teams issues get fixed up because you play a lot of 3-point game, 2-point games. Special teams are where you win and lose those games.
No doubt. And Iowa's got to just be better and figure that out. And maybe it's a potential change up front, starting with the snap, as we had the Boston College transfer that's in there for extra points and field goals. And maybe that's the elixir that can help out. And maybe that's what Drew Stevens needs too. I mean, a lot of times you got to kind of go to the specialty guy and see what he likes. And that could be something that might be a different kind of fix that they can make in the special teams. Well, all this doesn't happen, and Iowa doesn't hang around without the wizardry of Phil Parker. And what he did against this Indiana team that was averaging nearly 600 yards per game, had just absolutely taken to a pretty good Illinois team the week before, as we found out again, to do that and to do it in a different way. This wasn't the bend but don't break. This wasn't sitting in cover 4 and letting everything happen in front of you. This was bringing pressure all throughout the game. And that's what I love about Phil Parker. It's the old Hayden adage, scratch where it itches, right? And for this game, they knew they had to make Mendoza uncomfortable, and they certainly did. What a great game plan.
Yeah, I thought this is going to be one of Phil Parker's signature wins until it wasn't, because he dialed up pressure there at the end, and Mendoza finally got him on that touchdown pass. But I think what you're seeing there is if Iowa could tackle, if this team could tackle better than they have so far, I think they probably win that game. And that's, to me, a major concern. And in some of the years where Iowa has not had great success, it comes down to not being able to wrap up and tackle. And this team has some issues in that department. But as far as Phil Parker was concerned, I thought it was a great game plan. Normally, you're not accustomed to seeing Iowa put that much pressure on a quarterback, especially, I mean, you're playing with fire going up against a guy like Mendoza, because as we saw in that last touchdown pass, he is capable of beating you every once in a while. But they did everything I thought that they needed to in order to slow down that Indiana offensive gauntlet. And in the end, it still wasn't enough, because it came down to one play where there was a tackle that was missed. And I mean, you send 4 guys, and it had worked for him in the past. It just didn't work for him in the one key moment where they needed it.
Does the bye week come at a good time for this squad? I think you can make plenty of arguments why it is. And you start with the Gronowski injury, maybe the easiest part of it. But with this team and kind of what's still in front of them, do you like the way that this kind of set up and schedule-wise what Iowa has going forward, starting with the road trip out to Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think I'd rather have the bye week this week than between Wisconsin and Penn State, probably. Give them a week to figure out some things that they need to work on or try to get better. You go up to Madison. The Badgers are an absolute mess. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that's a guaranteed win. It's a rivalry game, and Wisconsin's going to try to punch you in the mouth. But it's going to give them a game to maybe put some things into practice in a game situation, whereas coming off the bye week going into Penn State, maybe that's not quite as helpful to the Hawkeyes. So, yeah, I think this comes at a really good time for them. Like you said, obviously, with the Gronowski injury, if he is capable of coming back, it gives them a little bit of time to get him a little bit healthier. But my read on this, again, going back to the cloudy term, is that you're probably going to see Hank Brown at Wisconsin, and just be thankful that this is not one of the better Wisconsin teams we've seen in the last 20 plus years. So it looks like it's going to be a real beatable team, and hopefully we talk a little bit about that next week.
Yeah, get a positivity and a little more positive vibes going. Looking forward to that. Well, there's definitely positive vibes over in the women's basketball program with the commitment of McKenna Lichko. Got it that time, I think. At least close. Nailed it. Absolutely. We'll talk about that commitment, plus our best bets of the week presented by FanDuel. We'll do that as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. The FanDuel app, it is simple to use. You can jump aboard even if you've never placed a bet before, and you'll be off and running in no time. So many different ways for you to play. Same game parlays, player props. I love their live lines that are out there during games, and the look-ahead lines in college football. It makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the app today and get started. That is FanDuel.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood, well, the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, the places that you love. Maybe it's your local sports bar. Todd and I, we both love to go to our corner spot. They got you covered on that front. Your team's fan base, whatever you're looking for, the best wings in town. Maybe it's that diner. They got you covered. And there are some great businesses right in Iowa City, in Cedar Rapids, in Des Moines, wherever you are in the state of Iowa, they have you covered. Those community aspects make your neighborhood what you want, and the neighborhood money spent in is great for your community. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockdowncollege to learn more. That's square.com/go/lockdowncollege. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Trent and Todd back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Wrapping things up with you today, Todd, and the big news from the women's program as Jen Jensen hit another one. McKenna Lichko makes her commitment a 6th-ranked player in the country by 24/7, top 10 consensus across the board. What I'd love to hear is, we've talked about some of these offensive skill sets and what they got recently. The number one thing that I read in 3 different scouting reports, she's a tremendous rebounder. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, this is a huge get for Jen Jensen and the Hawkeyes. It came down to South Carolina and Iowa. USC and Ohio State were in the mix as well. And she said she would have felt comfortable in either place, but ultimately she winds up going with the Hawkeyes. And again, I think this comes back to, Lisa Bluter set the foundation. Jen Jensen has been with her going back to the Drake days. And if you've ever met or interacted with Jan, she's got a great personality. She's very relatable. And the Iowa women's basketball program is obviously in very good hands. But you're talking about a player here that is in the Caitlin Clark discussion as far as the rankings. This is the highest ranked player that they've been able to bring in since Caitlin Clark committed to the program. And they're not out yet there's a 5-star and a 4-star prospect that they're still very much in on as well. So you're looking at what could be an absolute monster class here for Jan Jensen, but it all starts with this 6'2" forward that I think is going to be a fan favorite once she gets to campus here, because she certainly sounds like she's going to be a difference maker. Now, she is coming off an ACL injury, which, a good thing, get it out of the way before you get to college, I suppose. And we've seen Iowa over the last decade or so have its fair share of ACL injuries with women's basketball, but this is a huge pickup for them. And you just look at the Caitlin Clark momentum that built under her, and this is a continuation of that Caitlin Clark connection. And I think the Hawkeyes are going to she continues to make an impact on the Hawkeyes, even though she hasn't been on campus in almost 2 years.
One thing that I talked about a lot a year ago was the importance of them to build the bridge, right? To be able to come on the heels of Caitlin Clark and not fall on their faces in order to create that momentum, keep it going. They did that. They got to the second round of the tournament. They make a good run again. You saw those pieces, that it wasn't just one player, that it was there, because there's been plenty of programs in basketball. We've seen that, but not to be able to maintain that momentum. And they were certainly able to do that. I think that's huge, obviously, for this program to do that. And it continues this year. If you can maybe even take another step from a year ago and be a team that's in that top 3 or 4 of the Big Ten, that a team that is in the Sweet 16, gets to the second weekend. You do those kind of things. Those are those important building blocks then for that next tier. And when you get this group that is up and playing together.
Absolutely. If they had fallen off and maybe not made the tournament or something, I think it's really easy for prospects out there to take Iowa off the radar. But they got a good veteran group with Hannah Stolke. They've got young players like Addie Deal. And you're absolutely right. I think the bridge was successfully built there. And as long as they can continue to bring in the high-level recruits, I see no reason to believe there's going to be much of a drop-off moving forward.
All right, Todd, let's wrap things up with our bets of the week, our best bets presented by FanDuel, jumping into the Big Ten. Of course, no Iowa this week. We talked a lot about that one and how the point spread kind of painted a certain picture last week with Iowa and Indiana. This week in the Big Ten, it was the first bet that I made of the week. I jumped on right away with Michigan. I laid the 16.5, and I was comfortable to do that. If you know anything about my betting patterns, I don't play favorites very often. This one, though, boy, it felt like stealing money. And when you say that with a favorite, it's usually wrong. I just don't know how the Badgers score.
No, I think, this is a good situation here where you've got a good Big Ten team and a not so good Big Ten team. And there's a couple of those on the slate this week. Penn State makes that trip out to UCLA. And my one in the Big Ten this week, I got Maryland at 2-1, taking the outright upset over Washington at home. the Terps haven't really been tested very much this year. Washington, I think, might be the better team, but Maryland gets into the backfield pretty well. I think they're averaging about 4 sacks. You take Washington all the way across the country. The spread on this one is fairly close. I think Maryland can pull the outright upset there.
Maryland, interesting on that front. One other in the Big Ten that I did like this weekend, I like UCLA getting the points. Penn State, now it's going to go one of two ways. Either they're going to be coming out kind of confident, but that long road trip after the disappointment of Saturday night, we've seen Penn State certainly take it to bad teams, but something tells me UCLA with the new staff after the firing of Foster, they got a little something waiting there. I'm going to grab the big number in 26.5 with the Bruins.
I've got that one. We should coordinate this a little bit better because I've got UCLA and Penn State on my list as well, but I've got the under in that game. I saw 49.5. That's what I wrote it down earlier. You've got Penn State making the trip all the way west. They're coming off the disappointing overtime loss to Oregon. I see this game as one where Penn State imposes its will. I think they run the ball a lot and are happy to get out of there with maybe a 35-10 win or something like that. So I'll go under 49.5 in that game. And I'm doing the math here in my head. Does that help you with 26? I don't think it does it?
26.5.
Yeah, it's going to be close. It's going to be close.
Right. It'll be close and down to the wire. Anything on the national front, Todd, that you like? Anything away from the Big Ten that jumped out to you this week?
No, I think you would agree with me. It's been an interesting year so far with the odds makers and how they're handling things. But this week I looked at a lot of the national games and I'd stay away from most of those, especially after what happened last week.
Yes, I'm right there with you. Yeah, this card, and I usually have so many games that I bet every single week. This one feels a little bit different this week, and I don't have anything that jumped off. I kind of like Alabama, but another favorite. And when I'm liking favorites, it usually turns into a disastrous week for me. So we'll try to stay away from that one. Todd, we'll let you get back to it as we're recording today. Cubs are away. Yes, he's got the Cubs jersey on. Is that a Sandberg jersey or no?
Jody Davis.
Jody Davis.
Jody Davis.
I love it. Todd, we'll talk to you again next week. Thanks for your time.
All right. Thanks, Trent.
Todd Brommelkamp joining us here Tuesdays with Todd on Locked On Hawkeyes. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day.